Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are joining from. Welcome to the IBEN Insights podcast. I am your host, Cam. Just a little bit of housekeeping as usual. The first and most exciting little bit of news that we have is that we have opened up our webinar submissions for 2027. And if you are a avid listener of either the podcast or attendee of the webinars, you might notice that most of the time our podcast guests are our webinar hosts. So if you have any interest of joining me here on the podcast, I would highly recommend that you apply for a webinar next year. You can find that either in our IBEN Insider that you should receive alongside this podcast, or you should also be able to find it inside the LinkedIn as well. Next little bit of housekeeping. Keep an eye out on your email in the next couple weeks if you're an examiner. The beginning of September is going to be examiner registration opening. Always the most fun and insane part of the year here for the IBEN team. Of course, if you ever have any questions about that, feel free to email us at iben@ibo.org. With those little things out of the way, let's go ahead and introduce our guests today. First, Cheryl Shah is an experienced IB educator and leader with over 19 years of experience across diverse educational contexts. Beginning her career as a classroom teacher, she has served in a range of leadership roles, including an IB PYP coordinator, and is currently the principal of the junior school at Beacon Academy in Jakarta. She is an IB evaluation leader, program leader, workshop leader, and consultant who has supported schools and educators across the IB continuum. Her work is grounded in the IB mission and a deep belief that individuals can hold differing perspectives while contributing valuable insight. This conviction shapes her leadership approach, characterized by empathy, reflection, and a commitment to continuous improvement. A dedicated advocate for the PYP, Cheryl believes that inquiry should sit at the heart of education. She strives to create learning environments where curiosity drives understanding, student voice is valued, and meaningful action emerges from authentic experiences. Thanks for coming today, Cheryl. And that leads me over to Gary Green. Gary and I have actually collaborated for a few years now on IB workshop leader training. So it's great to finally meet him for the first time, Gary. And he is from Perth in Western Australia. He joined the IB in 2010, working in the MYP and DP with extended SA, and later trained as a workshop leader and field representative. He currently, as I briefly alluded to, is working with the Asia Pacific team with training new workshop leaders as a lead educator, which he is listed as his favorite role. Possibly because it's, working with me, but I don't want to get into semantics there. And currently, Gary is the head of Shenton College, which has 3,000 students and 220 staff, including a deaf education center, which is integrated into the mainstream education classes at Shenton. Working alongside the deaf education staff and students has given him a more unique and powerful understanding around inclusion and how it works at a more holistic level. I think that could probably be a whole podcast on itself. So maybe we'll see Gary again someday. Gary is passionate and energetic in working alongside all IB educators. His credo is simple: recognizing humanity for the person in front of you, and remember to live, learn, and lead by these three maxims: to be fair, be just, and be even in your approach always. Gary loves architecture and is an extreme minimalist in all things. He has an architect-designed house on top of a hill close to the ocean. His house is devoid of anything starting with P, so no paint, no pictures, no plaster, or very few possessions. What about Pinot, Gary? Do you have any Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio, any of the sort?
I'm Australian, of course.
Okay, so there's a few P's there then. Okay, so it's just some of the main ones. Okay.
I think the main one is positivity.
Oh, Gunjan, that's brilliant. I think I might have to hand it over to you, Gunjan. That was incredible commentary there. Yeah. Last little bit, Gary swims in the ocean every morning at 6 a.m., including in the winter, to stay fit and happy. I have to ask you, Gary, knowing that you will be leading a webinar at 7 a.m. tomorrow for you, are you still planning on partaking in your morning swim?
Oh, yeah. I'll be going at 5:30 in the morning, and I'll be sitting here shivering all the way through. But yeah, you can't break a tradition.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that, the podcast and the webinar did not ruin that for you today. So thank you for joining us, Gary. And last, Gunjan Raisinghani is a workshop leader, economics examiner, CAS coordinator, and experienced IB educator with over 15 years of experience in international education. She currently serves at the Nijira Modi World School in Jaipur, where her passion for student learning and growth inspires her commitment to professional learning, reflective practice, and educator development. Throughout her career, Ms. Gunjan has collaborated with teachers, school leaders, and IB educators across diverse educational settings to cultivate reflective practice, strengthen program implementation, and foster learner agency. She is committed to creating collaborative learning cultures where meaningful dialogue, purposeful feedback, and continuous reflection support both educator and student growth alike. As an active member of the IB community, she facilitates professional learning experiences that encourage inquiry, reflection, and practical application. She has presented at international conferences, including a workshop on the magic of inclusive education, and is particularly interested in how feedback and coaching conversations can build professional agency and create lasting impact across IBEN roles. There we go. Welcome to all of our guests. I hope that I introduced you in the way that you would like to present yourself today. So with that, maybe you'll have some feedback for me later. And with that, today's topic is feedback. In a way, feedback is one of the most integral parts of what we do with IBEN in a few different ways. Going on a verification visit to provide feedbacks to a school going through authorization, marking exams to give feedback to students on their countless hours of hard work, or of course going on an evaluation visit to continue the process of feedback long after a school has entered the IBWS ecosystem. But there is also feedback within our roles as well. So we are going to cover two main ideas. First, how we can give better feedback, and then second, how we can better receive feedback in the concept of feed forward. And the first thing that I want to ask my guests today about is about giving feedback. And the first concept is the expert's dilemma. IBEN has around 30,000 active educators, and all of you are experts in your own way. And I have yet to come across an IBEN without a high level of accolades. None of us would be here without applying to IBEN, being accepted, going through Gary's training, perhaps. So I want to ask all of you, how can our expertise sometimes become our greatest blind spot?
So I'd like to take that answer. Like you said, that we have years of experience. It comes very naturally. Now, when we are on assignments, it comes instinctively to us. So instead of looking for something, we also need to look beyond it. So what I feel is sometimes when we have all the experience within us, we tend to use it in a very superficial manner. We tend to assume that this would be a circumstance, or this would be the scenario, so naturally this would happen. And that happens to most people because we've been doing it for so long. However, that expertise sometimes may lead us to a situation where we may give feedback which is not leading to action. So we need to step back, and look at ourselves, not look at our expertise, but look at where we are in the context and the culture that we are in, and understand, what have I given out? Did I encourage thinking? Was I able to lead that situation to fruitful action? So for me, I really think that, as IBEN members, sometimes we are caught in this dilemma that, we know it all. And we have to then change our mindset. We have to begin afresh on each and every assignment we go. We have to begin that cycle, a professional learning cycle. So this is how I look at it.
That was brilliant. Yeah. Go ahead, Gary.
I guess I have a slightly different angle from Cheryl. I appreciate everything she said, and I concur with it. The issue for me, I think I said it, expertise and knowledge keeps you in a certain place. And what happens is that we forget it's about somebody else. So we rely on our knowledge to tell people what they should do and where they should go, but we aren't them. So what happens is that it's that lack of, we're keen to say, you need to be here, you need to be there, and this is how you get there, without allowing them that time to safely go, actually, I recognize, I see what's happening around, I'm thinking about where I go. So we tend to be too leading, we tend to be too passionate about where we think they need to be, and we forget the individual, because everybody's story is different. And what happens is that once we step back and go, here's some possibilities, here's some options, here's some ideas, where do you think the next steps are? And I think the other thing that came to me from this training was, we think that feedback has to be around a target, or people have to get better. Well, do you? Can't feedback be, I'm going to celebrate where you're at, what you have, what you bring? I don't want my feedback to be, you've got to go away with another job and do something. This is a moment where we go, okay, let's break bread, let's celebrate, but I don't really expect you to do anything apart from go away and reflect. And if you reflect and you're fine where you are, that's good enough for me. So it doesn't have to be always about an action or a goal or a transfer, even though that is good. It's about where they are, and who they are has to be the starting point for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's brilliantly put, both of you. One concept that we discuss often on the podcast is the idea of that sort of concept. Cultural context, right? Meeting people in the place where they are at the time that they are, in all of our different backgrounds. The idea of IBEN, right, and international education, we need to be able to adjust ourselves based on where we are and kind of what we're doing. And something that I personally need to work on, that you both kind of touched on, is getting comfortable both in our roles and in our jobs every day. And I agree that, it is much more preferable to meet people where they are in the moment, to celebrate what we have done rather than what we have not done. I think, we live kind of in a world where we focus on negativity too much. And so that's why I appreciate your perspective of positivity and maybe not always needing to look down on somebody because they are not in the same place that maybe we are or our colleagues are, right? So I appreciate that perspective.
So adding to it, Cam.
Yeah, please do.
Just one liner here. I think we start with that, with a very listening, non-judgmental ear.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have that ear, then we are celebrating them. Then we are, staying with them. Then we are helping them move forward. Then it's our journey together with theirs.
Right. And at the end of the day, very rarely are we working alone in our IBEN role. Even when we are working alone, like as an examiner, it still is not for us. It is still for another individual. But even still, like you were kind of saying, on a team, on a verification visit team, very rarely are you working alone. Even as a workshop leader, you're working at an event with other workshop leaders and your field representative. So there is always an opportunity for you to use the concept of feedback in that sort of wider experience, right? So I appreciate, that sort of experience as well. And from there, I kind of want to move on to the type of feedback and the concept of relational feedback. I'll kind of give it a little bit of an introduction based on what has been shared with me ahead of time, and then I'd love to open it up. The first one, I've kind of discussed it a little bit here. So first is the context. Planning prior, during, and post your experience of feedback. Second, the purpose. What type of feedback is it? What is the purpose of the feedback? Is it fast observational feedback, slow incremental feedback, or free-flowing dialogical feedback? And then the third one is the affect, the emotional awareness and the flexibility in adjusting to the moment. So I'd love to open that concept up as well, to kind of give the listeners an idea of how we should be giving our feedback.
Yes,
Well, I
Gary, would you
think,
like?
Cheryl, you
No,
kick it
I would
off. You
like you to
go.
begin. I would like you to
Oh,
begin.
well, look, I'm happy to take any part of those three things, and I think Gunjan and Cheryl are so beautifully observant around affect. So I might leave that to you guys to talk around those ATLs and those personal skills were very present. Look, the first part for me was around the context. And there's a really great quote that my principal uses, and he says, before feedback, how will you see the world through the eyes of the person sitting next to you? He always says, how do you see the world? How we see the world as the child sees their world, and that's your starting point. So what we believe is those preconditions, Cam, is how will I be really present? How will I make sure that they're the most important person in the room when they sit down next to me? And that planning about the agreeable time, the lack of distraction. When someone walks into the room for me with feedback, the first thing I do is I get up. First thing I do is I close my laptop. The second thing is that I move to a neutral space. The third thing is I welcome them and say hello. And I'll say as head of school, I'll say, no interruptions. This is our time. So it's planned. So that's really, really, really important. The other part of that is recognizing their experiences. I understand your strengths, and that is a moment we pause and we reflect, or we genuflect around that, what you have and what you're bringing, and because we get too fixated on where they need to be. And the other part of that was around, we talked about culture. I'm in an incredibly multicultural school. It is so richly diverse in terms of our 3,000 kids that we have. And when I'm working with staff across the board and in my roles through Asia Pacific, I'm very aware of cultural nuance, and I'm very careful not to stereotype. And the only way I can be observant and see where they're at is to listen and be open and not judge. So that was that first part. The second part, before I hand over to Gunjan and Cheryl, was around the type of feedback. This was really pivotal for me. Delete gave us these Harvard articles, which are in our bibliography, and they said, okay, slow it down. When you come for feedback, what do you want from me? And we talked about the observational, and that's beautiful because that means that they're here just to share what they want to share. You're not there to ask them to do anything or pose any questions. Tell me where you're at. Tell me your story. What's your understanding? Where are you at? And that's a beautiful moment because there's no pressure and there's no stress. The second part, and we call that fast feedback because they're actually generating. The second part is the more the slower feedback, where we're having a conversation where I'm thinking about posing questions, not tasks or expectations or judgments. How come you've reached this point? What do you think next? What could be a progression? What might you do differently? So you're posing questions. The third one, which I really like, is the high risk. This is one we're on the balance beam for this one, okay, with a double pike and a triple twist, because it's a free flowing. We don't know where it's going to go because we're in the moment. We are saying, I'm relaxed enough for us to pivot, to spin on a dime, as my New Yorker friends would say, and we follow the line where they are, and we're truly present. So I think those two things are really, really important. But Gunjan and Cheryl are beautifully, effectively connected, and they'll bring a different skill set because they're going to talk about being present and what are those skills that bring about those conditions where we feel comfortable to share.
Hmm.
I think this third lens that Gary is focusing on is the emotional awareness. It's about the affective skills. It's about being present and being present authentically, not just
Hmm.
not just showing that I'm there, but I'm actually there. I want to be a part of your growth. um, where there's curiosity to know, understand, give feedback, and also create and curate conditions so that this participant receives feedback.
Hmm.
So, me being um, authentically there, present, talking about knowing myself, owning myself, being myself, and then helping this other participant to know themselves, take that journey on, and be present all over while.
Right. Yeah, and that's such a good sort of wrap up of what the point of feedback is in the first place. Where the work that I do with IBEN, it's a lot of names on a screen. Even somebody like Gary that I've collaborated with for a few years now. We are just meeting face to face for the first time today, and it can be very hard to give that feedback when you can't humanize somebody, and you cannot relate with them on a personal experience, right? And so kind of just going back to what Gary was saying about, the purpose of feedback and the different types of feedback to give, it all doesn't really matter if you're not emotionally invested, right? So I think that, all of those 3 points are equally as important, but I think the affect is almost the most important one, right? Because you
It's
have
the
to be
thread.
able,
It's the
yeah,
thread between them.
exactly. And a thread is actually going to be a great analogy to the next topic that we are going to discuss. So the next concept to kind of tie the different types of feedback and the idea of relational feedback onto how maybe we can internalize feedback and take it into the future is the idea of feedback versus feed forward. And I actually have a bit of a visual aid. This has become my new favorite thing on the podcast. We have a great metaphor to kind of pair the topics each month, it seems like. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Voila. This is the Royal Gorge. It is a suspension bridge in Colorado, my beautiful home. It's the largest one or the tallest one outside of China, if that means anything. I can't remember how tall exactly it is. I went here in middle school. One of the scariest experiences of my life. I did not enjoy it. But if you ever find yourself in I think it's in the southeast part of Colorado, go check it out. It's lovely. On one side of this bridge here, we see the concept of feedback, kind of what we've been discussing so far. And on the other side of the bridge, we see the concept of feed forward. But we also have this middle section here that I didn't label, but perhaps that is an important part of the journey as well. So back over to our guests, what are we looking at here? What does this mean?
I'll take
So,
this one.
sure,
Cheryl,
sure.
go on.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, feedback is just one side, as you said. It is just helping us notice, understand, giving us a little clarity on what are we stepping onto. The middle part is the reflection,
Mm.
is the questioning, is the dialogue between the two members who are involved in the feedback. Uh, it gives us the choice, gives us ownership. So this is the place where you are not just informing but transforming that conversation.
Mhm.
You're moving from that feedback to feed forward because you're listening, you're reflecting on.
And I want to be clear, is this feedback within ourselves, feedback that we're giving to others, or maybe it can be applied to both?
Both. It's basically the feedback in our different IBEN roles
Hmm.
to anyone.
Okay. That's
Gives a
lovely. Yeah.
And
No,
so
and
please feel
Cam,
free. Yeah.
yeah, Cam, look, I've just had a realization as Gunjan's talking. If you have a look at your rather clever diagram here, reflections at the highest risk point of the bridge. Isn't that interesting? Reflection, we're walking in that moment at the highest risk. And that's because we are shaping and thinking about the feedback that we've had. We've got to the middle part of the bridge, which is like the, oh my stars, because now becomes the realization as we walk further across. So it's the highest risk for me in terms of transformative action and growth. So I think you've captured it great by having the water, but the realization for me is that reflective part is often the highest risk, because as we move towards our decisions, it gets safer and the depth of field is less. So Gunjan, great idea. Cam, excellent graphic. I've got something really interesting out of this I didn't have before.
And so did I. We discussed this, or it was discussed earlier in the webinar, and I think having that sort of large contrast there to show how far away the reflection is and the steps that it takes to get there is an interesting sort of take on it. And I think that is the most difficult part, kind of going back to what we were discussing with our sort of expert's dilemma, right? And how we all feel so sure in our own ways, and we're so comfortable in our actions and our roles. But taking that reflection in ourselves and challenging our pre-existing notions can be the most difficult part. It is the difficult part of just life, really. So I think that's beautifully put. What is then the feed forward section? What do we do with the reflection after we've gone through this struggle? What does it look like in the future?
So to take it forward from what Gary said, he's so rightly put this across that, the center, the reflection is the highest risk point. It is when we reach in the middle, whether I'm giving feedback or I'm receiving feedback, that is the point when I halt. I halt in my thinking, I halt in my practices, and I take in whether I've received feedback. If I've received feedback, I still halt, and I need to analyze what I have got. Only then will I be able to take that next step forward and move into something in a safer place, move beyond the bridge. Or if I'm giving feedback, for example, it's not enough that I observed, I made my notes, and I know it all. I halt to see that what now that I write in my recommendations, does it make sense to that school who's receiving it? Will they be still dependent, or will they know what are the next steps?
Right.
Will they be independent now to move ahead? So feed forward is that place when we have left the room and they know what exactly to do in their next steps ahead.
I think that kind of perfectly sums it up, right? Because the entire point of giving feedback or receiving feedback is because we want to achieve a desired result, right? We don't just say it for the sake of it. So whether that means for IBEN, that means bettering ourselves, which then kind of leads to the betterment of students and schools alike, that we serve. And so I think that's kind of a great wrap up of the concept in general and kind of this metaphor as well. So thank you, Cheryl, for that insight.
And Cam, I have a suggestion. I have another thought.
I'm ready. Give it to me.
The ancient educator's brain cells are kicking in. Let me give some feedback about your bridge. What I reckon we need to have, we as we walk, a single person starts to walk on the bridge. There are multiple people that give us feedback. So in the bridge, as you're walking across, there are lots of people here. There are lots of things we're noticing, because part of reflection is an awareness and understanding of what's around us and who's around us. But by the time you get to the feed forward, you're stepping off the bridge because you singularly. So you've listened, you've heard, you've understood. Now you're going, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it. And most importantly, this is why I'm going to do it. And why I'm going to do it is it transforms learning. Irrespective of your role, how will this transform learning and benefit others? So the graphic's good, but there's some feedback about some improvement, my learned friend.
That is a fantastic segue there. I guess my last question then would be, do I have to decide when to come off this bridge? Can I come off this bridge whenever, Gary? I want to go on this journey with you. I want to stay on the bridge. Can I just walk off whenever? Is there a certain time that I should walk off that bridge? And when I've decided that the feedback and the reflection has become enough?
Yeah, it's when you're ready. It's when you're ready, because that reflective moment says, actually, I'm ready to take the next step, or I need to think a bit more or talk a bit more. So it's that magic pivot moment where you go, okay, I know where I'm going, or I know what I'm going to do. And so for me, it's the bridge is fluid, it's structured, it provides a pathway. But Cheryl cleverly put appreciative inquiry on one of the pillars of the bridge. And that's what it's about. It's about how am I seeing the world and how am I filtering what I'm hearing. But ultimately, when I step across, because ultimately, if you're in a workshop, it's great, but you go back to the school and it's up to you to implement it. It's up to you to take the awareness and understanding. So what we want that to do is it becomes, for me, more siloed at the end and more driven, or more affirming. But the others may see it differently.
No, I think you are right, Gary, because there is a destination. We have to go somewhere. The bridge is what is helping us cross from where we are to where we want to be. So it's if I'm receiving feedback, it'll be myself to decide whether now I'm confident enough to take in whatever I've received and move ahead. If I'm giving feedback, I think I would halt there in the middle of the bridge and ensure that my participants are now ready to move on even without me, because they've got a good understanding of the destination.
That's brilliantly put, and I want. Oh, sorry, Gujan. Please, would you like to add to that before
No,
I?
no.
Okay.
I was just acknowledging what Cheryl said. Very well
Okay.
put. When once you've trained those self-regulating professionals, we are ready to step out.
It's true, and that is a lot. A lot of what we do in IBEN is that sort of idea of professional development, right? And it's a journey that never ends. But identifying these points along our journey that can help us get to the end of the bridge eventually. It's kind of what it's all about. So I want what you all said to be the last main word on this topic. And I've kept everybody for way too long. You have a very long day ahead of you. Does anybody want to give an example? No pressure. We can cut it if nobody wants to partake. An example of when you were given feedback performing an IBEN role and how you maybe used that feedback to then influence your feed forward in the future.
I would like to say that.
Okay,
Go, Cheryl.
lovely. Let's do it.
So I'm a workshop leader, and I went on one of these workshops that I took, and then I was waiting eagerly for the feedback, to see what my participants have to say, and most of it was very nice and flowery language and all of that. But there was one feedback that says, Miss Cheryl, she is very kind, but she is very firm in her understanding of the IB philosophy, and she wants us to uh, to incorporate it in our practices. So for me, I took it to be both negative and positive also. I felt that maybe my approach was very firm. So I went back and I spoke to all my team members. I spoke to my workshop leaders who I know as friends, and I asked them, how do I come across to you? Do I look, is my body language very firm? Do I look And they all told me the same thing, that when people don't know you, they
Yeah.
you seem to be too firm. Once they get to know you, then you're okay. So for me, that now is a part of my practice. I
Mm,
keep ensuring that when I speak, I am, giving them that understanding that I'm with you, don't worry. And, I'm not going to enforce everything, uh, on
right.
you. I ensure that I'm thinking on those lines all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of why we do icebreakers, right? Like the idea, get to
Yeah.
know each other a few minutes. I think that's
Uh,
lovely. Uh,
And I have a really short one because I
yeah.
still have it as an artifact. So I was in Phuket, and I've only done one or two workshops, and I was doing MIP projects, and the field rep came in, and in Asia Pacific, we give cards as field reps to,
Mhm.
and what she did for me, I'll never forget it, and I've got it still. And when I'm having a bad day, I look at that, and Kate Smith is her name, and I haven't ever seen her since. She's a wonderful woman. She wrote, "Dear Gary, in your workshop over the past 3 days, I've noticed." And she
Mm,
wrote everything no judgment, no, you need to get better. And what it did is I went away and I thought, she's seen this, so what does it mean? It was the most transformative moment. And I get that card out, and that's what I do now for the feedback in terms of a field rep. It's
mm.
around, this is what I've noticed. This is what I'm aware of. Are you aware of it? And I leave it up to you to think of what happens. So that treasured artifact is in my minimalist house with
Wow.
not much else. And can you see, Cam, the background behind me?
There it is.
There's
You're
no
right. You,
colour,
you
there's
were
no
you were not
paint, there's
lying.
no plaster, no
But
pictures.
I will say, is this not printed on a piece of paper, which also does start with P, Gary? I don't know, But no, to go back to what you were saying, I think we all need a Kate in our lives, right? Her name was Kate.
Yeah,
As I picked,
Kate
yeah, we all
Smith,
need
yeah.
a Kate in our life.
Absolutely.
Somebody to be able to kind of tell us when
Mm.
we have the opportunity to improve upon ourselves. It's one of the things I appreciate most in my personal friendships is, calling me out when maybe something needs to change in X, Y, or Z. And so I think that what you said there, Gary, while it is very, very specific maybe to IBEN in a way, in other ways, it's also very relatable outside of the IBEN world as well. So I'm going to take that little nugget with me as well and maybe give some people feedback today in honor of Kate, you know. But otherwise, any last ideas on
One
this
more.
one? Yes, please, Gunjan.
So a quick one. So I was taking a feedback. I was taking a workshop, and I got this feedback from a participant, and she said that the that when you're answering the questions, you're very very quick in doing it,
Mhm.
right? And I thought that I did it really well. I was helping them, and and then I probably noticed that that was sometimes I was closing down the opportunities for participants to probably think for themselves.
Mhm.
And that became the moment for me. and
Mm.
and and I started speaking slowly, pausing myself. And I understood that the feedback is only useful when you stop, when you
Right.
wait, when you let them think. So rather than
Mm.
defending my intention and telling them I was doing good, I started examining the impact, which made me go slow, a little slower at times, but slow enough to give them that
I
thinking
wish
capacity.
I wish that I had asked this question during the experts dilemma section of the podcast because I feel like that was a perfect kind of answer to that question and how you should
Yeah.
attack that in the future. And so it sounds like you personally have solved this. So I wish you luck. And, if all of these stories from the panelists today haven't taught us anything, if you're very eager for feedback, you should become a workshop leader. It sounds like becoming a workshop leader is a great environment for you to get feedback on really anything. So thank you to our guests once again for not only being here today, hosting today's webinars, but also for teaching me quite a lot about the concept of feedback. And hopefully I will get to cross paths with all of you again soon. Maybe you can give me feedback on this podcast. And, if you do want to give any feedback, please feel free, on YouTube, just put it in the comments. We read them, we take them into account. So feel free to leave us a little bit of feedback. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for listening. And we hope to see you again next month.